There's always more to do, and it seems the bar of performance is always moving higher. But with the right solutions, we can always remain at the center of calmness. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode at the Center of Calmness, and we're welcoming to the center this afternoon, Jen Anderson. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you coming. If you wouldn't mind, just to start off, what's going on in your life? Maybe just a couple points as to what's happening these days.
Running around like a chicken. And that's some things to do. What's really frustrating is I don't actually have the app to use right now to manage everything that I have to do. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's called Calmness, and it is an app for people who really need to stop trying to do too much.
I got you. All right. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Super interested in how this works, and this coming from my perspective, where I'm always overloading myself with excessive tasking, and then usually just things roll off, and I have problems with prioritization, all kinds of things. So I'm curious as to what motivated you to kind of move from a fairly conventional, just overload situation into actually developing a solution that can perhaps help many people with this issue.
Well, for me, no matter what I have, all I can see at the end of the day is what I didn't do. Even if it was something, if it was spent 15 minutes on LinkedIn and I didn't get to it that day, and who cares, it would still drive me crazy. So I knew that had to stop. And perfectionism was really starting to affect my health, my mental health, of course, but also my physical health. I get migraines. And so beating myself up on a constant basis was just making it worse and making them more frequent. So I did some therapy and mind body health. And I finally broke myself of perfectionism by making some really bad collages, because I'm no good at it and it doesn't matter. And that was the key that put everything into place. And from that, I was able to start coming up with a way that this app could work that would keep me from beating myself up, and hopefully it will have the same effect for other people.
All right, that's great. And if you could just give us maybe just a brief introduction as to what the app's features are and how it helps you specifically to deal with perfectionism and to focus on the appropriate tasks that really have the most impact for you.
Well, the huge thing is that we have a status called skipped. If you don't finish a task on Monday, we don't add it to Tuesday's list. We don't have an overdue status. We don't just automatically pile it on the next day's list. We assume that if it was that important, you would have gotten to it. And it doesn't disappear. You can go back and change it, but that way we're not piling it over and just adding it up and adding in this big lasagna of stuff to do. And right. So that's huge. You can just mark it skipped, because with other apps, especially with a repeating task, if it shows up every day and you didn't do it for a week, you have to click completed for every day, and you're lying to yourself, and you know that you're lying to yourself, and you don't like that. So you can just mark it skipped and or just ignore it, because it's not going to be added to your next day's list and the day after. And the other thing that I really like as a freelancer is that for multi-day tasks and repeating tasks, we treat them as separate tasks. So you have something that has to be done on Wednesday, but you have to start working on it on Monday, it will actually show up as 3 separate tasks. Because if it only shows up on Wednesday and you're going on your day-by-day view, you are going to be in trouble on Wednesday morning when you haven't started on it. Or something that is repeatable, that you do every single day. And it should be there, because especially as a freelancer or an entrepreneur, anyone whose schedule is changing, you want to be able to look at your schedule a week in advance or what have you, and see exactly what you have on your plate and how much room you have to add to your schedule. And if you don't actually have that accurate view of what is there, you're gonna put too much on your list.
That's always my problem. So, but just on the front end of this process, I imagine a lot of folks, now I know freelancers usually have a fair bit of control over what they put on their task list. But for others in our audience, we might come into using an app like Calmness there and simply be in complete overload. We have simply too many tasks when you add work, perhaps job related, perhaps a side business, as well as family, church, and also social activities, as well as nowadays politics is also involved, I suppose. Does the app help you prioritize, or do you kind of have to have that done up front before you get to Calmness and decide what to enter?
Well, the way that I think it should be used, it's very flexible. You can use it with any system. I kind of like the way that the getting things done, the David Allen method, where you put your entire mental load into the app, into your list, just dump it all out so it's no longer banging around in your head. And you can split it up into different lists, and then you can assign due dates, you can change the dates, you can assign priority. And to put your entire life into it takes a little while, but it's worth it. You're keeping track of it all in your head anyway, or writing it all down, or keeping it in a different app. So it's just only you. You are the only one who knows what has to be done first, what has to be done, what you want to do, what you can maybe do, what you think you should do, but you really why call that aunt that you don't like or whatever.
So it appears that it's important up front to apply that quadrant principle, where we identify what's the critical most important, as well as the long-term most important, and then also bucket the other tasks that, well, if they don't get done, that's okay, right? And make sure that we're applying the correct quadrants before we make any entries into the app, would you say?
Yeah, or you could just start throwing things in there. Just and create tasks, then put them on lists, then figure out how important they are. I think once you write it all down and get it all out, then you can start to see, okay, well, that I can't even start on for another year. And that's just pointless. And that's going to take every day for a month. So I need to actually add that to my list. And once it's actually on your in the app, you can kind of start to assess. But if you want to do a quadrant or analysis or any other system, we're not going to lock you into one way of doing it.
Excellent. And then once you've got let's say we follow your approach and we don't categorize anything, but we just say, okay, I've got 80 tasks and I need to get them all done this week. That's probably kind of late for some people, I guess, right? But let's say we throw them all in there. We spend, how long would it take to enter a fairly long list of tasks into the app?
Well, all you really have to enter is the name of the task. There's a lot of other things you could do, but if it's just decide what to have for lunch, call the client, prepare for status meeting, it's just a matter of just typing in that. And then you can go back later if you want to and add due dates or make it repeating or add it to the habit tracker. We actually have a habit tracker report, because what I do right now is I have a separate piece of paper, and it's really annoying and hard to remember if you want to drink your herbal tea and take a meditation break and go for a walk. If it's on your to-do list, it's easier to remember. So
right, of course.
You can throw in anything and then just organize it later on.
I got you. Okay. So you can actually classify a task as just a straight up task or a long-term project or a habit that you're trying to reinforce.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
exactly.
That's okay. And then
it's all about. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I want to hear the comment.
It's all about breaking away from perfectionism. So however you want to use it, you can do it that way.
I gotcha. And then once you have everything in, obviously you can label habits and habit forming tasks as those. But what ability do you have to categorize? Is it a color coding system, or do you organize each task into individual lists? How does the app help you organize the activities and classify everything?
You can move them into different lists. You can assign different colors to the statuses. The default is nothing red, because red is just too punitive and upsetting. So I think for the habit tracker, you can assign colors, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. You don't. It's a nice to have. You don't have to.
I gotcha.
And then when you assign a due date to something, we have a sort of a calendar view where it's your list day by day. So you can look at today's, you can look at every day for the next week, and that will help you figure out, okay, what do I have to do now?
Cool. Okay. And then how would the app serve up the tasks that you've labeled as critical that have to be done this hour, this day? And then how finely can you tune and tweak those? Does it give you alarms, or how does it serve up what your must-do list is?
Yeah, you can set reminders. It's not an automatic thing, but yeah, if you want to set reminders for a certain time of day, even if for something that's daily, you can set reminders. Hopefully you'll get into the habit of using it and you'll just check in with it every day. And, for those of us that get a little antsy when we get reminders and all these little pop-up things, then it's not necessary. But for those of us who are also me, who forget to do certain things or forget to have lunch without a reminder, then we have that too.
I have that problem as well, especially on the busiest days. I'll find that it's 3 o'clock and I'm actually having a bit of brain fade, right? Because I forgot to accomplish that very important, that normally I wouldn't forget, task of just eating, right? Or obtaining some kind of replenishment or exercise. Are there any built-in, easy to select tasks in the app that folks that have repetitive things, say if they want to go jogging, right? Is that something you can just click a button and add that, or does everything have to be typed in as a custom entry?
It's all up to you. We're not going to make any suggestions. For some people, especially those of us in recovery from eating disorders and compulsive exercising, even suggesting that they go jogging every day is going to cost them several minutes of energy. So it's all up to you. We're not, no judgment. You do you, whatever you want.
Excellent. And now, of course, we've kind of gone through several features of the app itself, but I'm sure you've tested this app or utilized the logic in various places and perhaps with some folks. What kind of results have you seen so far when folks either use the principles behind the app or perhaps the software itself?
They're just really excited about it. They're just so happy. Oh, I need this so much, because especially moms who put everything on there. And there's also a status called delegated. People are very happy with the delegated status.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, because ordinarily you would delegate it to someone else, but leave it on your list and worry about it. But, with this, you could just mark it delegated and maybe add a task of follow up with the kids that they actually made dinner, or your virtual assistant or whatever. But the actual doing of the task, that's off your plate.
Gotcha. Okay. So do the delegated tasks come back do they come back? Does the app remind you to follow up on those to be sure that whoever you delegated to completes those and provide a double check for you, or does that basically take that task and almost remove it off of your daily requirement once you've indicated that delegated status?
Yeah, it just checks it off. But that's actually not a bad idea. We might actually consider adding that in, like if you mark it delegated, a pop-up asking if you want to do that.
I don't know. From my point of view, sometimes if I delegate something, it actually increases my stress level. So potentially, you certainly wouldn't want to make that a default, but I wonder if an option could be interesting for those that are, say, power delegators and they have many delegated tasks, but they may need to make sure that they have the follow. Of course, I guess follow-ups could also be a task added to the list separately.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I gotcha.
And just having it as only a follow-up rather than doing it should be less stressful just to look at it.
Right. Well, I'm glad to hear that the folks you've tested this with have been so excited to run this. I wonder if we could touch a bit on the journey away from perfectionism itself. Of course, just the development of a process like this, a proven process, is incredibly cathartic and would do a lot on its own just in the process itself to help overcome perfectionism. But I wonder if you might just comment a bit on your journey from the throes of perfectionism, which I'm very familiar with, into where you are now.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And well, perfectionism has just been a lifelong thing. And when I worked in technology, I was a systems analyst. I designed software. I did functional design, not make it look good, but figure out every little thing that it does. And with the computer, you've got to be perfect. The computer is not going to be able to guess what you meant. So it has to be perfect. And it is. My body is getting tense just thinking about it. And when testing software, when designing software, being a perfectionist is incredibly important. And when the people around you aren't, it's incredibly stressful and annoying. But once you stop, any other part of your life, or now I'm a freelance writer, marketing consultant, perfection is not an asset. And the tension and the clenching my jaw, and I suffer from chronic migraines since I was 11 or 12 years old. It's just, that's me. But the tension and the stress and the perfectionism would just make it worse, would make them a lot more frequent. And so something had to give. And I discovered Mind Body Health. The app that I used to go through it was called Curable Health, but there were a few. And it's about retraining your brain, because your neural pathways might just be used to causing pain. And the other is you might be carrying around a lot of trauma and baggage and stress and pressure and perfectionism, and that could be causing your symptoms to be worse. So I did, it's a lot of self-help, a lot of talk to my therapist, and with the collages that I mentioned, that was my idea. So sort of an art therapy. I just had to stop expecting perfection, but I'm not that great at playing guitar, but I know enough people who play guitar that it bothers me that I can't play well. My French not that good, but I've lived in France. It really bothers me that I cannot speak French that well. So I needed something that really was absolutely low stakes. And so for everybody, that's different. And for me, it was just cutting and using a glue stick, and it was just lots of fun. And I make them now just for fun, not necessarily to be deliberately bad, but that was the breakthrough for me, is to find something that, okay, it doesn't matter, and it helped a lot. And another thing that I was able to do is this voice in my head that's nagging me, I'm the meanest boss I've ever had. You change that voice from your own to someone you don't like, it's a lot easier to tell them to just go away, shut up, I'm not listening to you. That's and awesome. It's a little weird, and it took a little intention, but yeah, that helped a lot too.
I think it's a lot less weird than you might believe. That self-critic is huge, and it brings loud in my head a lot. I have my own methodologies for dealing with that, of course. But yeah, the collage sounds extremely therapeutic, and I think that's becoming relatively common, right? Some kind of, maybe not exactly the same as what you're talking about, but a very similar kind of almost like a deliberate escape, but an escape that brings you into the moment rather than taking you out of the moment. That's quite huge. If I could ask, does the Accomplished offer any way to if you will, to plot the tasks in any graphical format that would help the more creative mind think of tasks in a different way than just the typical linear fashion, or does it just rely on the basic lists and the 1, 2, 3 methodology of chunking through everything?
Yeah, it's just the different lists and a list per day. And as more people use it, we're going to have our ears open. Every suggestion is not necessarily going to be in line with our mission, but some ideas, if some people say, oh, we'd like to see the data this way, and it actually makes sense, and other people like it, then we will consider putting it in there.
Awesome. Well, that's great. I'm sure the audience will be thrilled to know that they can try to utilize the app for a bit, and then offer these suggestions and perhaps actually get what they suggest into the app's feature list. That's totally great. If I could ask also, does the app work on Apple, PC, phones, all the above? Is it multi-platform?
Yes, it is on Apple. It is going to be in the Android store, the Google Play Store, so for Androids. And there will also be a web-based version, so you can just use it in a browser. And it will sync across all of them.
Oh, that's huge. Okay, so regardless of where I am, or even if perhaps I'm at work and want to pull up a quick list, reminders for the evening, I can get that from the work computer over the web browser, and it's awesome. Okay, great. Sure. Well, I wanted to show the contact information to make sure the audience can get a hold of you to learn more about the app. So I'm going to throw the information up there. So it's accomplished.app, correct?
Yes. Okay. And right now, it's not in the stores yet, but if you go to accomplished.app, you can sign up to get an email the day that it's available.
Okay. And I know that the launch date can move a little bit, but I did just want to ask, what's your forecasted launch that you're expecting for Accomplished?
Middle of September. We're saying September 15th, but I also am afraid to say that because the App Store could take, who knows? They could take a day to review the app. They could take a week. I don't know. So roundabouts, middle of September. Okay.
Well, I just wanted to highlight that and make sure that everyone watching or listening in the future pay close attention to that launch date. And of course, as this podcast gets recorded and launched in an audio format, it'll be quite a bit later, and I'm sure that the app will be in widespread use by that time. So, Jen, I really appreciate you coming on the show here at the Center of Calmness and describing this wonderful solution for us that helps us move away from perfectionism and a little bit closer toward a rational life and a bit more calmness. So we appreciate that. Look forward to having you back on the show at some time in the future to hear how the development's going and how the launch is progressing.
That'd be great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Jen. And you'll always find me here at the Center of Calmness. I'm DK Warner.